Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Identity Insights by Indicio. Today, we'll be taking a look at a demonstration of Cardea in action from a recent meetup that Indicio hosted. This is an excellent opportunity to see an example of verifiable credentials at work and how they interact with systems to provide actionable data. Let's jump right in.
Great, thank you very much. Hold on, let me get me set up here, and I don't know why. There we go. This is what I want to get to.
Let me know when you're ready and I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, if you could, please. I am ready. Bingo, hit share. Okay, so on my screen, you should, well, first of all, hello, everyone. My name is RJ Reeser. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Liquid Avatar. And we were, I guess, one of the founding members of Cardea, along with a lot of other Linux Foundation organizations. And I really, really enjoy the participation with Cardea because of the reference code. So everything that you guys see here today is based off of the Cardea reference code. And so as a result, we are interoperable with open standards and then also everyone else that meets the Cardea reference code. And so you'll see on the left-hand side, this is our wallet. It is publicly available today on the right in an app. On the right-hand side is the Cardea Enterprise Agents, and I have 3 of them. I have the Health Lab, which can issue a number of credentials. I have the Government Enterprise Agent, and then also a verifier. And I'm going to walk through all 3 steps, which is what Keela showed us, where you have a lab that issues a credential to a user. They use that credential to go to a government to get a trusted traveler pass, and they use that pass to get access to a restaurant or a venue. The key here is it's all identity protection. It's putting the self-sovereign identity, which is put the user in control of their data. There's going to be times where they're going to want to share some data, but they're in control of it. Other times, and I'll walk through this flow in the demo, you're not going to want to share data. There were a couple questions in the chat, and so I'm going to click on a button here that says view all for our credentials. We, Liquid Avatar, believe that you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands of credentials once the adoption of all of us building to the same standards takes off. There'll be thousands of credentials. And so we have filters that we use as avatars that you'll be able to filter your different credentials so that you can easily find them. But I'm not going to use a filter. I'm just going to go to view all and look at all the existing credentials that I have. And the question was, how do we know that this individual is the correct individual for a credential? So in our app, to get access to your app, your password is your biometrics. There's 3 other fallbacks, but we tie it to your biometrics in your image. And the base credential that you get is a phone credential. And as you look at it, the only information that was provided when I created the account was my phone number and the biometric picture. So as we were doing this Aruba pilot, and the lab that we are working with is, how do we make sure that the individual we give this credential is the correct individual? I think in the chat it said the identity binding. There's lots of ways to do this. The one way that we're doing is based on biometrics. So the lab will actually look and have a biometric challenge and say, all right, this is the correct person that owns the wallet. I saw them do their biometrics. And then they're able to issue the credential. Another question in the chat was, how do you store additional information? So, we are at Cardea, we're building all this different type of schema for credentials around the medical industry. But when you start to say that there's going to be additional data, you can either store it like we did with the image that is on the blockchain. It points to a secure server that has that image. Or you can use a credential to get access to a third-party site that has the data, the angiogram or the other data. It's stuff that we've all talked about in our meetings. And that is, information that is, as this industry matures, we have paths to get there, but it's not always fully complete. So let's move over to the demo. I'm going to hit the close button. And I have already created, as you can see, there's a medical release credential. I use that to prove who I am in the Cardea environment. everything that you see, the QR codes that I'm going to display right here, is not a reader. This actually starts a workflow. And let me hit refresh. I may have done something in my setup. So to display the out of band, there we go. Sorry about that. And all I'm going to do is scan the QR code. It is easy. Once I have my credential, it is easy as scanning QR code. And in this QR code, it asks for the connection, which I accepted. And then it says, hey, do you have a medical release credential? And I want you guys to watch these fields here in the enterprise agent. I already have the credential. So I'm going to say I already have it and hit send. And then these fields get populated so that, oh, I got to say yes. And this goes back to self-sovereign identity. I can decide what fields to send or not send to the lab. And as I hit send, you can see that all the information went across. I'll hit OK. In the workflow that we're doing, I'm going to issue a lab result credential so I can get a trusted traveler. There are many other credentials that'll be able to be issued as Cardea continues to mature. But let's go ahead and go issue a lab result. Now, Keela mentioned the governance. So this is the key. How do you know who the issuers are? How do you know what credentials are accepted? And that is the governance that comes along with this whole ecosystem. The governance can also go down to an attribute level so that you can automate some of the processes. For example, we know that with the PCR test for COVID, we need to have the observation and the specimen within 24 or 48 hours. So the lab technician would enter in the correct details. We also know that the governance is going to look for the result and needs to be negative. Obviously, all these other fields are important. And depending on the scenario that you are using the credential for, you'd have these things filled out and you would tweak the governance to look at certain fields depending on your use case. I'll click on submit and you can see that a credential was successfully sent. And there it is on the left-hand side. This is all hitting the test net for the Indicio identity blockchain. I'll hit accept. And then you'll see that my wallet will update here with, there it is, with a lab result. That is that negative test. So from there, I'm ready to travel and I will then connect with the government agent and say, hey, I would like to go to this destination. The requirement is to have a PCR test. The government agent starts a workflow. This is all about the identity binding and a high assurance level. Again, I go back to my scanner, scan the QR code. It shares data with who the individual is. Obviously, these fields will have a little more detail to it when we roll it out. But this is our government agent. This is the correct agent. I'll accept that connection. Now, here's where the agent's going to ask me for more information. It'll pop up here. They want more demographic information. This is where I can take control and say, in this scenario, I can say cancel. I'm not sending you any information. Your only requirement is that I have a negative PCR test. So that the government agent would go to the contact, they would find me and say, okay, you're right. I'll issue a trusted traveler pass if you have the correct PCR credential, which here's the lab result. It's within 24 or 48 hours and it's negative. You can look through this information. Here it was 725 at 1140, negative. And I'll scroll down. I can eliminate some of the fields as needed and hit send. And that has been verified. And I hit OK. And it'll pop. Oh, it already popped up. It says that it offered me a new credential, which is the trusted traveler. I click accept. And then you'll see how my wallet will update to the trusted traveler.
So a couple of comments, RJ, just to bridge to healthcare. So where RJ was typing in the lab result, you can imagine that that would be a translation from a standard healthcare transaction that already exists. Those interfaces would be translated into the defined schema that we've outlined for lab results. Again, neutrally, not COVID specific lab results. Any lab result is a neutral schema for that purpose. And so that's important. And then the trusted traveler that we have here, was named specifically for the COVID use case, but it's this concept of a derivative credential that says like you've met the criteria and you're good to move forward. And therefore RJ isn't sharing his lab test with the world. He's sharing that his lab test, that his requirements for being okay for, in this case, travel, have been met. And nobody else needs to know whether it was a lab test or vaccine or whatever.
This code was all generously donated by CETA after they did their workflow in Aruba to form the basis of the Cardea ecosystem. There are a couple names that we probably want to change to apply to medical more generally. So the fact that the verifier and derivative credential issuer is called the government, it's not always a government that will be doing that. And where the derivative credential is called a trusted traveler, it may not always be used for travel. So we have a couple names to iron out as the ecosystem matures, but the software is all there and publicly available so that, you know, if you can't wait for the name change, you can actually get started and use it, even though, you know, it's not necessarily going to be a government that's doing this stuff or used for travel, but you could use the schemas and the code to get started and rename things if you wanted to right away. So we felt release it early and then iron out the bugs rather than wait till it's perfect for medical later.
Okay, so the final step then would be to get access to a venue or a restaurant, which is the verifier. And what, just to reiterate what was just mentioned, is the restaurant doesn't need to know whether any of my health details, just that I qualify that based on the regulations that I can go to the restaurant. And so that is what this is that we're just leveraging a trusted traveler pass, and they do not have access to my medical details. And QR code just scanned with the verifier. I will hit accept, and it's going to then ask that I have the proper trusted traveler credential, which you just saw pop up. I'll click on the trusted traveler credential. I'll hit send, and now it updates to say the trusted ID is 1B3A, which if I go and open my credential, you'll see that that is the correct credential. And click on it. And scroll down to the identifier, which
Was up a little?
Yep, did I just pass it? There it is,
Yeah.
right here. So that is the full cycle of the workflow where you can see how we're protecting PII. We have a high assurance on the binding with the identity. But more importantly, right, is the interoperability and us building from the reference code. And so I really encourage everybody to attend the interopathons, but more importantly, the workshops before the interopathons. This is a very good group that will help kind of troubleshoot and help you guys with your implementation so that when we get to the interopathon, things run a little bit smoother. What I loved about this group versus some of the other groups is that we roll up our sleeves and use the code. And you find so many other issues or problems with workflows than you just do sitting around a table and coming up with a document. And so this is heavily focused on a reference code and also interoperability. So I welcome everyone to join and reach out to myself or anyone else in this working group. And we'd love to work with you guys. So thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to learn a bit more about Cardea and how to get involved in the project, I'll have a link to their website below. If you're interested in decentralized identity and would like to learn more about that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel as we will continue to bring you some educational content. If you have any questions or specific topics that you'd like for us to cover, please leave a comment below and we'll be sure to address them. Thanks.